Welcome to the Strategy Skills Podcast. I'm your host, Krisa Farova, and this episode is sponsored by strategytraining.com. And today we have with us an amazing guest, Dr. Klaus Kleinfeld, who is the only leader to have successfully served as CEO of two Fortune 500 giants on different continents, Alcoa in the US and Siemens in Germany, with nearly 40-year career spanning multiple industries from established businesses to tech startups. He has advised US presidents and global leaders across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And generally, Klaus is an incredible person. I was lucky to get to know him a little bit before this interview, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Hi, Christina. Happy to be here.
Klaus, you argue that energy management, not time management, is the real driver of performance. Maybe we can start with explaining the turning point when you made that shift for yourself.
Yeah, well, having been born in Germany and raised there, basically discipline is a very important word, So I've been a big fan of time management, obsessive, probably. My metaphor for life, for business life, was it's an ultra marathon. At that time, I ran marathons. Funny enough, and. One day, a colleague of mine who also was a good friend, storms into my office. I was working here in New York at that time, storms into my office, and he knew how to push my buttons. And he says, "Klaus, you've been all wrong." And I said, "With what?" And he said, "With your metaphor of business being an ultra marathon." I said, "Okay, well then, what is it?" And he said, "It's a number of different size sprints and basically recovery time in between. That's really the magic for long-term performance." Then we had a heated debate, and he talked about, and it's all about energy management. That and a few other things got me looking into it, and I started to see that he is right, and that in reality, it's the energy that we have and how much we have of it that you can bring to anything in life, anything that you desire, be it business, being a personal life, but that's the source. And then the question comes, what drives energy? What drains energy? And how do you do that? So I got into this and saw it's really not that complicated. It's body, mind, and soul, and I split the mind part into emotion and mental. And then it's about purpose and how you deal with that. And there are lots of tricks. And then I saw also, I love playing tennis, and I also saw that in the tennis world, the tennis players in the top became older and older and stayed longer and longer. And whereas the exact counter thing happened in the business world. The people burned out much earlier. And so I thought, wow, maybe there's something we can learn from the high performance world. And so that got me looking into this high performance world, and a whole new beautiful world unfolded that helped me tremendously to basically sustainably perform in business as well as in the rest of my life.
Klaus, and what are some critical things you uncovered as you started looking at high performance, top performance, energy sources?
Yeah, so it's all about, how do you generate and maintain energy? So the physical world is relatively well understood by most people, but even there, the people understand, yes, you have to work out, you have to keep your body fit, you have to eat well, drink, hydrate, Sleep is something that only in the last years have come onto the radar. The aspect of breathing is just about to break through for most people. So that's on the physical side. Then on the mental side, which I break down into emotional as well as mental. So on the emotional side, a lot of people are stunned when they tell me, "Hey, Klaus, I get so worn out in these meetings, and this person is provoking me, and I get mad." And when I tell them, look, the emotions are made by you. You are in control of your emotions, because the emotions are coming inside of you, and nobody puts an emotional thing on you. It's a response to somebody, but you have the choice. You can respond this way, or you can respond in another way. and you can learn this. You can learn how to not respond to a provocation, or even how to turn this into a strength, So and then the other thing is the biggest emotion is love that we all have, and that can be positive as well as negative. But people always say, well, but I don't have that in my control. That's partially true. But what's not true, there are things like kindness and gratitude that give you a positive emotion. You have it completely in your control, So I have a habit, and it's all about habitualization. Happy to talk about that, how you build that into your life, So, and I can talk about that later probably. But the mental side is what do you focus on? How do you see things? I always tell the story about the old shoemaker and his two sons. He wants to turn his business over to one of his sons, and he doesn't know who to turn it over to. He sends them to Africa. One goes to the West Coast, the other one to the East Coast. The first one sends him a note back: Father, I've got very bad news. The market is dead. Everybody runs barefoot. The second son sends a note back and says, Father, amazing. The market is endless. Send me as many shoes as you can get your hand around. Everybody is barefoot. So as silly as that story might sound to some who are listening, but the truth is, I have seen as a characteristic for top-notch leaders more often than not that they have trained themselves in contradictory thinking. Not that they do something then with it, but basically they don't buy conventional wisdom, and they look at something that comes up from multiple angles and see whether this what commonly is perceived as a threat not also offers opportunities. So this is a big aspect of how do you deal with certain things. And the fourth one, the spiritual one, we don't even talk about that at all, I think, in the business world, but this is the question of, do you have a belief in a higher being? I mean, many of us call it God. And that energy can be very, very strong, very, very, very strong, and particularly in very dark times. I have experienced that myself in very dark times where you feel that you have very little to believe in. That can be a source that can help you a lot. So, so I. For that reason, I also covered in my book, so just so that people see the whole picture. And the last thing I would say on the energy side is then there's this aspect of purpose, and I've always struggled in my life with this question of what is purpose really. And so I use writing the book and by sorting it also out once and for all for myself. It's one of the concepts that humankind has been dealing with since basically we existed, because it's the question of, who am I? Why am I here for? What am I here for? And I think everyone here asks themselves this question multiple times in their life, and sometimes the answer that your head is giving you is probably not very pleasant, right? So, but this is a struggle that everyone is struggling with, and people don't know how do I get to something. Some people think it's just one thing, but in many cases it's not just one. You have different roles, different hats, so there's typically different purposes that at the same time you're following. But one thing that purpose does, it gives this diffuse energy a condensation. It's like what laser does to light, also very diffuse. It puts it into a laser, concentrates it, and boom, it goes through anything, and that's the same that purpose does with energy. Well, maybe I stop right there, Christina. Maybe already too much that you wanted to know.
I love listening to you. Can you tell us more about the hard time and what specifically made you realize that there's a higher being there that we call God?
None of us can say that there is a higher being, but the point is more if you believe in it, does that actually support you in your keeping with your life? Or does it hinder you? And my experience has been it rather supports you, because you sometimes are stuck in your negative self-talk and questions that you ask to the universe, And in this case, I always say it's like a 1-800 number that's on for 7 days, 24 hours a day, someone to talk to. Right. And that when you're all alone, that can help you tremendously, and then people tell me, well, but Klaus, maybe one day, how do you know? Your question, how do you know this? I don't. But all I can say is I can ask myself, would I actually be better off if I were to deny it, or am I better off to believe? And you can make this choice every day. Every day when you get up in the morning, you can say, I don't believe, okay, fine, but whenever I thought about it, I've decided for myself, it helps me tremendous, and supports me and gives me strength and gives me additional energy to have that belief. And I would recommend also people that don't worry too much about it. We all don't know exactly, and it's probably a very helpful way to give you another superpower.
And I'm so sorry you went through difficult times. I know what it feels like, and I'm so glad everything is okay now. You're such a wonderful person, so you never want anyone to suffer, but I certainly don't want you to suffer.
Thank you.
How do you personally recover and recharge? You're obviously, so far, you had such high pressure career and you continue working incredibly hard. What are your go-to recovery methods?
The best way that I could recommend is habitualize as much as you can, because every time you consciously have to make a decision, it requires a lot of energy, and the likelihood that you're tired and you don't want to go through this, that you drop a certain thing, is high. So the moment you habitualize this and you make it a routine, you're well off. So, for instance, I decided long ago that keeping my body decently fit is extremely important. I also, in my life, it was typically that in the evening I had to do something, either a longer meeting or see some people, have a dinner or something with folks. So the only time that I could really schedule in my calendar for working out was early in the morning. So I'm getting up early in the morning, and I religiously have between 30 minutes to an hour of workout, right? And I try to stick to a certain routine also with the workouts during the course of the week. So and my office knows that even when I travel, which I do a lot, that no matter where I arrive, that they need to build this buffer in, so that I literally come from the airport, and go to the gym and then start working, and I feel miserable if I don't do that, so that's one thing, then on the emotional side, I have always learned that when the easiest thing to control your emotion is breathing, and when you just it's not complicated and nobody even notices when somebody is tempting you to a response. Number one, you don't have to respond. It's completely in your control. And if you feel that you want to not just to be obsessed with the thoughts that the other person tries to trigger on you, just concentrate on your breath. Let the breathe come in like a flow, like a wave through your body, and then go out, and you can do this. And you will see that the immediate response from your body is calming down, right? So those are things on the mental side. We talked about the focus. I've always tried to look into a challenge also as an opportunity, and I also looked into an opportunity as a challenge. So just to see is there another side to it, and for me, leadership was always not explaining things afterwards, but looking around the corner and seeing things earlier, anticipating things that other people would not be able to anticipate.
Klaus, and you've worked across 4 continents, at least. Actually, you worked across the entire world, from Germany to US to the Middle East. What lessons translate universally?
That's a good question. And a lot of people have asked me, hey, how could you be effective in these different environments? And I think, yes, there are cultural differences. Absolutely. And you have to somehow be sensitive to this, and don't jump to conclusions too early. However, there's one thing, not just one thing, but a major thing in common. We're all human beings, and the one thing that unites us, we all want to be respected as a person, right? So I always felt that no matter which environment I worked in, I wanted to show a respect for an individual, no matter which role they are in. And even if I don't agree, that doesn't mean that this is not an individual who I respect, right? Respect gets expressed in many ways, but one common thing is that you listen to what the individual has to say. If you don't let the individual talk, and it's very hard to make the other person feel respected, right? So, and I have to also say I'm a big lover of people. I always felt that I'm learning something from everybody, no matter how long the interaction is, and I have this knack of what I call random acts of kindness. So, for instance, when here in New York, you have a lot of high rises, and when I'm in an elevator, I typically start a conversation with somebody. And just yesterday, actually, I was in an elevator and started a conversation with an individual about automation of elevator shafts, because we were both waiting in front of an elevator bank that had 4 elevators and nothing was happening, right? So, and funny enough, when we reached the bottom of it, the individual shook my hand and said, "The best conversation I had for the whole day." And I thought that was funny, but I also enjoyed it, and it gives you energy, so.
Definitely. You will learn a lot and you will make some very good friendships along the way as well.
True.
How do you think technologies like AI will change the way executives and leaders must manage their energy and focus?
Well, I think it challenges leaders even more than what we've seen in the past. Number one, it makes them stronger because you have a lot of additional knowledge on your fingertips. At the same time, the race is on. I mean, whoever can AI-ize, I think I call it AI-ize, their company fastest probably will win. And there's not one day, I literally mean not one day that goes by where not something else is happening and something gets accelerated. And the question is always, how can you basically get your team behind it and run? And in this case, it's not just run, but race. And these questions that where you usually had a little bit more time for it, these days you have less time for it. And the price is high. The price is very high. I think that the diversion between the first and the second will become much larger, much larger. If because the speed in which improvement happens is faster. So I think that's quite a substantial risk there. And I think you have to get on it. I'm a big fan of AI. AI for society, AI comes with a lot of additional challenges, but at least for the next probably few years in the company, first of all, there's no choice. You as a leader have to adopt it. You have to make sure your team adopts it. Basically, drive them into adoption. Otherwise you will be eaten.
That is very true. So, continuing to speak about AI, of course, it is advancing, as we're discussing, much faster than anyone can absorb in terms of being on top of what is happening and how to implement it in your organization. How should executives reframe their role in AI-driven environment and generally when technology advancing so fast?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that they have to reframe it. I think the framing is the same. I mean, it's just, as I said before, it's just that look at whatever avenues of AI application you can build into your company and accelerate AI-ize it as much as you can. Think about data being your goal. Data will also be the limiting factor if you don't get the right data. And also think about how can you outperform your competition. These things are in general the same today than they are in future. The way how to get there will be different.
How do you personally stay up to date as much as possible? Of course, it's not actually possible even for people who just focus on AI as technical people, but what is your approach that people can learn from?
My approach is first of all, I mean, I've been lucky that already in my very early age, I was fascinated with software, writing software. So drove me already from late childhood on, and that was long time ago, so that I started to write code at a time when nobody was even imagining that you could have your own computer. So one of the first enormously great improvements was to get my own computer. That was amazing, and get my hands around this. So I think it would help to principally understand how do these things work. So how do these large language models work, and where can I use them? I try to surround myself with people who are very knowledgeable and who know the field very well, and I regularly stay in touch with them. And in some of the companies where I'm invested, we are moving ahead and implementing it. I use it myself, as much as I can, and also some of it I throw away as useless. That always happens, it's too early probably for some of it, but many of those. And you have to revisit them probably half a year later or a month later. It just happened to me the other day, where I had thrown an application. Literally, I tried it out for 2 weeks or so, and then I thought, this is crap. This makes my life not easier. It's too complicated. User interface is a disaster. I'm not going to use it. And it just happens that one of my friends, I wanted him to show me something, and he showed it to me, and I realized that he's been using as one software patch, used that software. And when I looked at it, it was completely different now, and it had solved a lot of the issues that I didn't like. And in fact, I told him, okay, I'll go for it. Let's go this direction, trying it out, but not trying is not an option. Not an option. And as a leader, always you have to show also to your team that you are moving forward. And this is not just another fab. I've seen many fabs. Many fabs, in management. This isn't one of those. This is real.
That is very true. Are there any specific tools you feel comfortable sharing that you personally like at this time?
Well, I am a strong user of a number of AI models, and the use cases. In the companies is for me itself. It's sometimes when I have complicated tasks, I almost don't Google anymore. I typically go right away to one of the models, and look at that. But then, in the area of marketing communication, to expedite your speed in which you can respond to what's happening in the outside world, stay on top of the outside world, and basically connect it to your customer segments and get the message out to them as quickly as possible. That's one area that I feel very, very strong about. Then in the healthcare area, so. I've invested in companies that have strong AI capabilities to look at surgical environments, or one that basically uses AI to diagnose the structure of train tracks, so how whether there needs to be some maintenance done, or some bigger things happening there, so. Another one company that I've invested in is in the logistics field. Basically, logistics is super complicated, and it's still something where a lot of money is buried. And with the better management of data and better AI, you can respond much faster to what's going on in this world. So I think it's partially the savior of a lot of retail stores to do that. But there's very few companies that have the capabilities. So those are use cases that I'm seeing. But frankly, I have not seen one single field. Well, I have seen a few fields, but very few fields where I would say that they are protected from AI. Very few.
Definitely. For someone who is not technical and they feel that they really fell behind, they were focusing on their day-to-day responsibilities and they were not following what's happening with AI. They use ChatGPT, but beyond that, they don't really use AI much. Maybe they use Perplexity sometimes, but nothing beyond chatbots that are general use chatbots by most leaders. What would you recommend they do in terms of maybe some publications they start reading? How could they catch up a little bit at least?
The simplest thing is sign up to one of the AIs and then use the AI as your personal teacher. I mean, that's, I think, one of the strongest and easiest ways, because then it will, you talk in your language to that, and you can ask the question. None of the questions will be seen as dumb, and they will all get answers. And then, I mean, in the future world, this future world, or the today's world, the reality is it's a lot about the questions you ask, so what questions do you ask? And so, but in this case, what I would do is sign up for it and then start your own tutorial and say, hey, explain to me what is principal AI, blah, blah, blah. This thing will spit something out. Then there are words in there that you might not understand. Say, I don't understand these words. Can you explain it in simple language? Boom, here it is in simple language, and you can do it at the speed that you want to learn. I mean, that's one of the things that I find most enjoyable, and I've used it quite commonly, particularly in family environments, when there's something where we say, why is that so? Why is a word there? Why is there a stem of the, why is that so? And somebody says, oh, I think it's this. Then they say, okay, let's do a little training session here, and let's go to one of the LMMs, So that's what I would recommend. I don't think I would go to a book. A book in this case, I think you can do that later when you feel a little bit more comfortable, or when you can address more specifically what you want to know. I mean, the field is so big. Do you want to know a certain application, or are you interested in the societal impact of AI? And very, very fundamental points there also.
That is an amazing advice. 100% agree. My approach as well for anything that I need to develop knowledge about quickly. And it's interesting because both you and me, we remember time when there was no internet. And if you need to know something, there was no easy way to find out. I didn't even have access to a library, I remember. So the only thing you can ask your parents, but they probably will not know.
Probably when I was 8 or so, I think one of my biggest dreams was to one day own an Encyclopedia Britannica, right? And there were these people coming around, knocking on your door, wanting to sign you up as a lifetime thing. Nobody could afford it at once. You would get one every year, So, but I always thought that would be cool if one were to own it. And the other dream I had, which was even bigger at that time, is I love music. I have a very eclectic taste. I love classical music as much as I love R&B, blues, rock and roll, and I always thought, what wouldn't it be great if I had, and I had a relatively big record collection already that I assembled, I thought, wouldn't it be great if I had that digitally and would be able to carry it around with me, and here I am, not only do I have that now at my fingertips, but I'm also learning new things through it, because they now basically show me what's new in the field, knowing what I like, so I would have not even dreamt of that. I thought there's a record store. I have to go to it.
Yes. So I started my career as a concert pianist. I really understand what you're talking about, classical music. I would not say I was really in love with classical music, but it's something that I dedicated a lot of my life to. And what is incredible now is that you can even ask about specific composers,
exactly,
details about their life, when they were writing this piece. The time we live in, it's incredible. Anyone who remembers the time before, when there was no internet, we're not even talking about AI.
Well, and also I just recently discovered a young violinist, and I heard this song because it was suggested to me on Apple and Apple Classic. I listened to it and I thought, what a beautiful violin. And then I was shocked that she's playing with the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra. Now it's a good symphony orchestra, although she is, I think, Korean, so, and I thought, I made a note. I mean, and I actually recommended it. I was in Europe last week. I recommended it to one of my old friends there and said, who goes regularly to Bamberg, who lives close there. And I said, you should go and hear her out, This would never have happened before, the barrier for somebody to come through the ranks was much, much, much higher,
Definitely. So continuing speaking about AI because it's such a critical topic right now. What would you advise to someone who feels overwhelmed because of constant AI updates and they constantly feel that they are behind, they're not able to catch up, even though they're trying very hard to be on top of things?
Yeah, don't worry. I mean, so I think that you can only do as much as you can do, right? So that's one thing. But the other thing that I've seen also is that people sometimes try to boil the ocean. And instead of saying, hey, what is it? Basically being a little bit more mindful of focusing and saying, what I really want to understand is this, and then drill down on this. Very often you don't have to understand everything in the same depth. It's sufficient to understand a certain thing as a framework, in principle, and then dive deep down. And if you feel that you don't have a certain thing when you dive further, you can still go back up again, but I would recommend don't boil the ocean, particularly on AI. If you want to boil the ocean, you will not win. You will not win. But that's true for most fields, and think about what is really interesting to me. I'd rather go for one, I call it legs, so one deep dive after the other, and then you have your tabletop, which is your horizontal knowledge, and then you do drill downs and say, I really understand this. And it also will give you substance, that's what I would recommend.
What skills do you think will still matter, let's say 10 years from now? And I'm asking this for our listeners who now need to prioritize where they should invest their time in terms of strengthening or learning certain skills.
Yeah, that thought has been going through my mind a lot. And normally in the previous changes that I've seen a lot in my lifetime. Globalization wasn't even really a word when it all started, and the whole aspect of automation, robotization only started. And I was never concerned about jobs, because I always thought that there's a good opportunity to upgrade, and then there will be enough jobs, and that's what happened. I'm not sure that that's going to continue this way. There is a debate with some of my friends, what role will humanoid robots play? Now we had the humanoid robot Olympics just recently, and frankly, when you saw some of the images there, I got more hope that the humanoids, is a little bit further away than some of my friends are thinking it is. But thinking of a humanoid with the capabilities of a kind of ChatGPT style thing, that's pretty heavy. It could take a lot of jobs, but I'm not sure how close that is. I think jobs that, and I think that also the old idea of jobs that require creativity are safe. I think it was almost a cynical play that one day I was sitting here in New York at the office of one of the AI companies that I'm invested in, and outside, this was in downtown, and outside there was a lot of noise going on. And we were looking down there, and it was the screenwriters who were having their strike protest. Who would have thought that the screenwriters were the first ones who publicly protested against the use of AI, and given that they are obviously in a very creative field, it may be. I would guess that the best choice is not the choice of certain jobs, but the best choice is probably the choice of getting ahead of the curve, and arming yourself with AI rather than trying to fight it or outperform it. Right. And there may be some areas like, the classical jobs of analysts. I think they probably will be very limited. I'm not saying that they will be entirely gone, but you see already this time around at the how much fewer jobs are available, entry jobs in law firms as well as with consulting firms. You can see the impact already.
Klaus, and what I see a lot with clients who work for major organizations, including tech companies, is within their departments, they feel that adoption is too slow.
Yes, exactly.
Or almost non-existent.
Exactly.
And they feel that they need to do something to step up. So let's say if we take as an example a partner at a major consulting firm who is managing a practice and they feel we are falling behind, we're not using AI.
Yes.
What would be your advice on some of the things they need to keep in mind in how can they work with their team to start integrating AI into their work?
In a consulting environment, if you don't use AI, then I mean, I can't help you. You shouldn't be in that industry, frankly, right? So, because it is clear that almost all of the large consulting firms, one of the first things that they did is that they built their own AI agents based on the knowledge that they have accumulated with all the studies, you know. So if you are in an area that hasn't done that, then I would say get your ass up, you know, and do it, right? And build a couple of agents, you know. I mean, I have a ton of agents that I'm using in my daily life, you know. So and they make my life much easier, much easier. So build that instantly. You know, when it comes to how do you make a proposal, you know, probably structure it by you don't even have to structure it because it's structuring by itself, you know, but make sure that you get as much data in there as possible, as quickly as possible, you know. And then you probably should also be careful that it is not used for, it's not in the public domain. That's the other problematic thing, obviously, you know.
Of course. And if you feel comfortable sharing maybe one or two agents that you use, the use case.
I have agents for specific companies, right? So that I use, and I have a private agent that basically I use for some of my personal matters, you know. And I have one also that scans a certain field in the internet that gives me a very good understanding and updates me and has the knowledge of that, you know. And yeah, so. And I have one agent that I don't like, and I think they show that one agent I'm unhappy with, and that's an agent that does images for me, and drawings in this case, because the drawings, and I'm very unhappy with that agent. You know, I told my system already many times that it's not improving fast enough. It's actually terrible, to be honest. You know, that is the thing where I feel there's not accelerating, but maybe the use case is so specific.
Thank you so much for sharing, Klaus. And are there any specific technology or AI breakthroughs that excite you the most, or something that you anticipate happening in the next few years that you're looking forward to?
Well, the thing that excites me, and not necessarily in the most positive way, is this convergence of humanoid robots with AI, right? Because the moment you have humanoid robots that truly can do things that a human can do, you know, with AI capabilities, that's obviously something very powerful. And that's exciting as well as it's frightening. Obviously, the whole aspect of usage of AI in information targeting is a challenge, is a big challenge. The other thing that I feel is also exciting, not in a positive way, is that there was actually a discussion that my longtime friend Henry Kissinger had started also long time ago when he challenged. I think it was Eric Schmidt at that time, you know, from Google, and said, "Well, do your software engineers have ethics training?" Right, and that question, as strange as that question could sound, but I think then he went to the point and said, "Well, when they write write code, they do implicit decisions for uh, for what they allow and what they won't allow, and." That they should at least be aware of this. And I'm not. He said, "I'm not capable of telling them what exactly to do, but I would feel more comfortable if I knew that they had some understanding at least of what impact they could have." You know, so bringing it back to the discussion around the invention of the nuclear bomb. You know, and I agree with him. I agree. And today we see even more of that than we'd seen then when he asked that question. What does that mean for societies? Right? I mean, we have the debate currently going on around TikTok and the algorithms around TikTok. I think this debate is important, because obviously there's some magic sauce here which made TikTok successful. Or at the same time, there's some disastrous sauce that has been feeding people with things that are probably not very healthy for them mentally as well as physically.
And a related question to this, where do you think AI will surprise us? Most likely in areas maybe where we are currently not paying enough attention to.
I mean, I personally think it's going to change almost. It has the power to change almost everything, frankly, right? So it has the power. If done in a positive way, it has the power to accelerate decision making on all levels, including political decisions, including even national or international cooperation decisions. If used in a good way, if used in a bad way, I mean, it can bring down the cost of warfare and the precision of warfare to nations, and even nations, I mean, like what we see today in the Ukraine-Russia war. I mean, a very different war, and a war that can be fought not necessarily having big times of weapons, So so I think that's what goes through my mind on this. And then the question is, what impact does it have on our political systems?
I agree. What blind spots do you think most leaders, at least what you're observing, have about AI adoption that maybe worry you the most?
Well, I think you will see potentially the discrepancy will even get broader, and discrepancy in terms of those who understand and own AI, and those who don't understand, only partially understand, and don't own it. So the spread, and that's also, I think, reflected in the wealth. The last thing we saw was the compensation package that was put together for Elon Musk, a new one. And I think it was driven by AI, driven by the board to probably wanting to have Elon not split his time and spend more time on his AI stuff, but rather integrate the AI into Tesla, which I think for the shareholder is good, So I'm not arguing necessarily against it, but when you see the numbers there, the numbers are showing you what exactly probably can happen, and it will stretch society even more than what we are seeing today.
And the last question on AI today, I know I asked a lot of them, but I think that your wisdom and knowledge in this area is such a treasure trove for our listeners. What I wanted to ask you is, which industries do you think will be reshaped the most, the fastest by AI in the next few years?
Ooh, the fastest. I mean, we've seen already many. I mean, as I said, the screenwriters have been shaped already, done, the consulting industry, all the analysts done, moving further, and getting to more seniority. All of this will be the drive to more seniority, So, and the legal profession, boom, moving through the ranks. Yeah, I mean, so those are some that have moved very fast. The whole search world has completely changed. I think Google is really running now, trying to run as fast as ChatGPT has been running. So in every software field, if you don't bring AI in, you are toast, basically, right? And I literally, I mean, don't know very few industries where AI is not moving extremely fast. But in terms of impact on people, probably those service organizations have been, because they have been large users of young talent, have really shown a pretty dramatic change already. And it's only starting.
And we already touched on it, but just to maybe expand a little more as a question to wrap up with discussion on AI, for listeners who are those young consultants, those young lawyers that are being replaced by AI. What would you recommend they do in terms of skills development right now?
Become knowledgeable on the AI and use it as a tool. Use it as a tool because the best way is to get to get more productive, because there will still be analysts needed, some, but much less. Like the screenwriters, I think the ratio was from 4 down to 1, and I think that's going to be the step now. So you have to adopt it, have to get very good at this, and then learn as fast as you can so that you accumulate experience and move up in the next experience rank on the consulting side, so because then, you also have some inherent knowledge. You know people, the relationships to individuals. When you're in an analyst role, you don't know anybody, have no client contact, but the moment you have client contact and people appreciate you, the human side comes into it. So I think that makes you more irreplaceable than sitting in a dark room, and grinding through spreadsheets, which an AI can definitely do better than you.
Yes. Klaus, you recently wrote a book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What would you like people to take away from the book?
What I would like people to take away, when I wrote the book, I wrote it basically out of the motivation to give people a framework on how to lead their life, not just their business life, and with energy being at the foundation, what I wanted to make sure that people have a pathway to sustainably perform with all the challenges today, and become like an athlete and exactly know how to lead your life with these different types of sprints. How do you recharge? And recharge usually doesn't need that much time. You just have to know the tricks of the trade. So therefore, my book is structured in 2 chapters. The first one is called The Inner Game, and that's all about energy management. How do you deal with it? How can you have energy so you can put it to use at whatever you want to? And the second part is more like a classical leadership book, and how leadership styles, how to build a high performance team, how to deal with a board if you have a board, so those type of things, how to create a successful strategy, sustainable competitive advantages, and these sort of things. That's in the second part, The Outer Game. That's a classical business book, but the first part, I think, is the one that motivated me most to write it, because I wanted to make sure, after I also saw in the younger generation that there are not that few people that burn out already in their early 30s. And I think that is not necessary. That's really not necessary, and that's not only not necessary, but I would highly recommend to not do that, and rather start to reflect a little bit more before you even feel that you're running against the wall, and that's, I think, where the book can help.
Definitely. And for someone who's listening right now and they feel that they're basically suffering from burnout, what is the fastest way to renewal?
Well, the fastest way is really to lean back and breathe a little bit, right? To just lean back, close your eyes, and there's this thing called box breathing, which is really cool, So every special forces use it before the mission, to basically get energy back. So you lean back, you breathe in, you count to 4 when you breathe in, you hold with a count of 4, you breathe out on the count of 4, and then you start the whole thing again. And when you do this, you will see that in less than, let's say, 2 minutes, you will feel very, very much refreshed, And there are other things. A good friend of mine basically puts in his headphones and listens to a great song, a lovely song that brings memories back, closes the eyes, brings the memories back, And I have another friend, who just puts the phone to his assistant, or in your case, if you don't have an assistant, give it to your colleague and say, please pick it up if somebody calls me. I just go around the block, and walk around in fresh air, just see that the world also goes on, and that it's not all about the problems that you think are ruling the world, And in reality, your problems might be small. And the last last thing I would like to recommend to people, there's a chapter on purpose. There's a long chapter on purpose in there with, I go through many permutations of what different philosophers see there. So worthwhile. I enjoyed writing it, so I hope you will enjoy reading it. But there's one chapter in what do people say on their deathbed. And I think that's the one that I felt the most dramatic one, because there are very few studies. There's one study that showed us, about the biggest regrets, and nobody actually says, "I wish I had spent more time behind my desk or in the office." But what do people say? People say, "I wish I had allowed myself to be happier. I wish I had allowed myself to be happier." And they come on the last breath. They come to the realization that happiness is something that is in them. And before they probably didn't see it that clear. Or the other one, which is equally scary, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not and not let a life that others wanted me to live, So I think there's just two of those things. Think about this. Today is hopefully not the last day of your life, and there's still time to change, and my mantra has always been, I love it, I change it, or I leave it. And if I feel that I've tried changing it doesn't work, then you better leave it, until it ruins you. And also, I know that people are always afraid, do I find a great job, and that's this other point of fear. And I always say fear stands for false expectation appearing real, so don't let your life be led by fear. And I've seen people being in abusive relationships with their partner, or even worse, with their boss, and when I said to them, why aren't you leaving? They said, I don't know, maybe it's the same everywhere else. And I know the trade of the trade there, blah, 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 but honestly, you will become a boiled frog soon. And then you will end a life in misery, so think about it. What would you say if this were your last day, and make a leap of faith. I've seen in my lifetime, when I made this decisions, that typically it hasn't. The fears were not warranted, and it has turned out much better, much better.
Why do you think so many leaders get stuck in kind of a survival for years? They are successful from the outside, but inside they're actually suffering, and they're not really progressing as fast as they could have. They're not contributing as much as they could have.
Well, sometimes it's the frustration that they feel that the leaders are not taking up their good ideas. They are not listening. So I've seen this many times in large organizations, that some of the smartest people become cynical, and I've made it one of my indicators when I got into a job newly, to see where is a cynic. Because a cynic typically is a smart individual, because otherwise they couldn't make this jokes that everybody laughs about, and the person inside has not given up in the belief or in the organization. In fact, it's the expression of frustration. Why isn't the organization doing different things? So what that's, I think, the best way as a leader is to I've always tried to find them and have a one-on-one and learn from why are they making these comments, and what could I learn from them. And it's not been rare that I learned a lot. And in the conversation, I've also seen that these people are still open to it. They've just been seeing too many things that they didn't like, and that makes them cynical, So, but I would really suggest, and if you're really unhappy, and look for, can you change it? And if you see you can't change it, then I would say pull the plug, leave it.
Last question for today. My favorite question.
Okay, what's your favorite question?
Over your lifetime, what were 2-3 aha moments, realizations that really changed the way you look at life or the way you look at business?
Well, I think, so I think the first two are simple. Actually, the first one was because I unfortunately was challenged with the death of my father when I was very, very young, and my parents were refugees from East Germany, so and it was just about to get better. And then he died, and that realization was tough to understand, that life ends. life ends. Life is ending, and it's not your choice. So that was the first one. The second one is because my mother sent me a lot to East Germany to our relatives, because all of our relatives lives there, to spend my vacation there. So I grew up in an environment, and you know what I'm talking about, that was an oppressive environment. And but I had the right passport, so for me it was vacation, but I knew how to mingle, and nobody would recognize that I was not from there. And I had my friends group there. But it showed me also what courage means, and what freedom means. It shows me what freedom means, so the importance of freedom, a very important concept for me. And the second thing that I saw is how courageous people behave and stand up for their beliefs in spite of knowing that they will have negative responses to deal with, but they wanted to show what they stand for, And the third thing is probably an old saying of my mother, that was what isn't get paid for isn't worth a lot, and that was more a warning to not fall for a lovely language when people say, oh, we love your contribution, it's so wonderful, but are not willing to compensate you adequately for the value that you're giving. So I think those are three that have fundamentally influenced me.
Klaus, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through loss of your father. And then, yes, all that is incredibly hard. For me, the most important person in my life growing up was my grandmother. I also lost her very early. I know what it feels like to basically lose kind of the light of your life. And I'm so glad that that you are here around on Earth and doing amazing things for everyone. And this was such an incredible conversation. I had a packed day, but this is definitely a highlight of it. And I really appreciate everything you shared today.
Pleasure. It's a long time ago, and as I said, it has shaped my life, and I have no idea whether I would have become the same person that I am with the same independence. I doubt it at times. So again, back to this point of where others see the challenge, and it was a big challenge, to be honest. But in the end, it probably shaped me in a way that allowed me to be more successful than other people.
Yes, the darkest moments in our life really shape us into who we become.
Exactly.
Where can our listeners learn more about you, buy your book, anything you want to share?
Yeah, Leading to Thrive, Klaus Kleinfeld. You can buy it on Amazon. It comes in multiple versions, paperback, hardcover, as well as and digital as Kindle, also on Apple, as well as an audiobook. The audiobook, I'm a big fan of audiobooks, because I do it when I listen to it when I work out also, or when I'm in the car, when I have a minute on the plane, so, and it's read by a wonderful person, Rich Miller, lovely voice. I'm in love with that. So, and then you find me on LinkedIn, under Klaus Kleinfeld. Great discussions. Actually, we had a great one the week before last on AI, interestingly enough, and I will do more on AI because I saw that a lot of people are struggling with some of the things that you mentioned. And the field is big, so I want to address some of those things going forward. But there you find these things, and then I have a website called Leading to Thrive. And there you also find other podcasts, for instance, and other things that I've published, So please feel free, and you can also reach me directly either via LinkedIn as well as through the website Leading to Thrive.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Christina, wonderful to be with you. Appreciate it, and lovely to get to know you. Yeah.
Thank you. 100% a highlight, such a huge highlight for me. Our guest today was Dr. Klaus Kleinfeld, the author of Leading to Thrive. And this episode is sponsored by strategytraining.com. You can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. You can also get McKinsey and BCG winning resume, which is a resume that offers from both of those firms at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. And you can get access to episode 1 of How to Build a Consulting Practice Level 1 at firmsconsulting.com/build. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to connect with you all next next time.